I'm Wayne Jeffrey. I sort of got about 90 Jersey cows, low input system, grazing near enough all year round, aiming for about 360 days a year out grazing. They have winter housing. They can come in where there's housing available whenever the weather turns. It's sort of slightly towards a regenerative system. It's more flexible than organic, which means sort of lower inputs, and we have a flexibility to bring in food waste from a local cider press farm as well, which reduces the carbon footprint. We're now changing away, or changed away quite a few years ago, from high input fertiliser use, so it's now using quite a bit of vetches, clover, and the different legumes that are available. Have tried lupins in the past, but it wasn't particularly successful long term, so it's something that I need to try again when I know a bit more about it. The Jerseys was an accidental thing, because it's the only milk contract I could get in 2004, but as it's turned out, it worked out quite well. It's suited to the grazing because they got a light footprint because they're quite a small cow, and it does suit for the year-round grazing. They withstand extremes in temperatures and climates, which is, I'd much rather have a grazing herd than I would an indoor unit. It's not my idea of in housed all year round. I'm not overly keen on that system, and I feel this is a more natural sort of environment and lifestyle of what the animal should be doing. And they have quite a varied diet on this system as well, because it's grazing. Sort of will go from grass in the spring through until turnips and green crop throughout the summer. And apple pomace, it will be brought in from outside as a waste product over from September until roughly January. And then we're trying to reduce the amount of silage made to cut machinery usage. So hopefully with the grass silage for the milking herd will only be fed from probably December until March. So it's only a very small block of time, which is a stored food, which is obviously uses a lot more fuel and machinery and reduces the carbon footprint in that way. And we're also the clover and ley is also high in protein, which also means we're cutting down the bought-in cake, sort of bought-in feeds, cereal feed based feeds. So hopefully we're reducing inputs or imports into this country of that. So long term it is more pushing high protein feeds to try and reduce importing protein, and hopefully the breeders will gradually improve the protein protein and legume crops to make them more suitable for growing in the UK. But hopefully that's the way it will go. The soils is the basis of any crop production, which is also needed for the animal side of it. So we're using cover crops for over the winter here, which is oats and vetch and mustard and stubble turnip, so a tiny cattle turnip, which holds onto the nutrients over the winter by absorbing it into the plant as the plant is growing, and then it's released back into the soil when the animals graze it off in the spring, or it can be topped off and ploughed back in as a green manure as the other option. We're also using sort of coming from a bit of experience in organics years ago, is the cattle dung we are mixing as making it almost a compost by mixing it to use the heat of the composting process to kill the weed seeds, which will help reduce, because I don't use any crop sprays on any grazing on any of the cattle feeds. There is sprays used on corn that was grown here on 30 acres out of 150, which cleans the farm up sort of once in every 5 years roughly, which cleans the farm, which then means I don't have to use weed sprays on any of my own cattle grazing afterwards. The benefit of a mix, sort of feeding grass and clover and growing corn and growing turnips and vetch and what else we've got, mustard. There's so many different species that a plant that we grow throughout the year and throughout the cropping cycle, that it does help improve the soil structure and puts humus back and puts nitrogen into the soil, which means hopefully the soil will be improving rather than depleting, and it means that I use very little fertiliser. There's only sort of 3 tonnes a year, which would probably be about a tenth of what a traditional dairy farmer of this sort of acreage would have used going back 20 years ago. So it is sort of moving forward where the regenerative farming is slightly broader rules than organic, which means you can farm to your best ability, whereas organic sometimes stunts bringing in, say, just the apple pomace would have been beyond the rules of organic, which would have been a real shame as it's a good feed. And it does, and the regenerative farming also lets you sort of firefight a problem where organic rules would have stopped you saving a crop if you had a problem. So it's all about trying to be as close to organic as you possibly can, but just having that lifesaver there rather than lose or waste a crop. It does seem a more a system that has a better future, really.